Rich man throws his 4-year-old daughter into a snake-filled well, but this horse sees it and does something you won't believe. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The rain lashed against the windows of the secluded mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, as Valerie Sutton, just 4 years old, woke up startled by the thunder. The little girl descended the cold marble staircase of the house, looking for her adoptive father, Adam Sterling, when she heard his raised voice coming from the study. Adam paced back and forth, the phone glued to his ear, gesturing nervously. His words reached Valerie through the partially open door of the study. Yes, the lands of the Hope Ranch are ready for sale. 50 million. No one suspects they belong to his deceased wife. She didn't leave a registered will. The girl hid behind the velvet curtain, her little heart pounding fast. Something in Adam's voice made her afraid, even without fully understanding what he was saying. The child doesn't know anything, Adam continued, lowering his tone. She doesn't even remember her biological mother. Perfect for our plans. The oil-rich lands will yield millions for decades. Valerie swallowed hard. Her exceptional memory, which always impressed adults, recorded every word said by Adam. She remembered entire conversations from months ago, and now these new words joined others she had overheard. Outside, through the blurred window, she could see the white silhouette of a horse that always appeared in the fields during storms. The animal was at least 15 years old and seemed to know every corner of that property better than anyone. I need to speed up the process, Adam said, his voice increasingly tense. The investigation into her uncle's inheritance is getting too close. If they discover she is still alive. Valerie felt a shiver run down her spine. Still alive? Why would he say that? She was right there, playing every day in the mansion's gardens, always alone. Always watched only by the white horse that grazed freely in the fields. The 52-year-old man stopped walking, and his voice turned icy. No, I can't wait until she turns 18. It's too risky. I need to resolve this now, this week. The girl wanted to run, but her legs trembled. She didn't understand everything, but she knew she was in danger. Adam had always been distant with her, never affectionate like other fathers she saw on television. But now there was something different in his voice, something that frightened her deeply. The lands where we found oil belonged to her mother. Yes, Adam continued, I forged the adoption papers 4 years ago to have legal access. But now this lawyer appeared wanting to talk to her about an inheritance from an uncle. If he finds out the truth about how I got custody of her... Valerie covered her mouth with her small hands to avoid screaming. Her memories of when she was a baby were confused, but she knew she had parents before Adam. Sometimes she dreamed of a brown-haired woman who cradled her, singing a soft song. The white horse neighed loudly outside, as if sensing the tension that gripped the house. Adam looked out the window with irritation. That damn horse. He always roams the property as if he owns the place, he muttered, returning to the phone. No, tomorrow I will resolve the girl's situation. I know a perfect place, isolated, where no one will find her. Valerie's heart raced. She needed to get out of there. But when she tried to move, she bumped into the side table, knocking over a small vase that broke on the floor with a dry sound. Adam stopped talking immediately. Wait a minute, he said on the phone, and Valerie heard his heavy footsteps approaching the door. The girl ran as fast as she could, climbed the stairs stumbling, and locked herself in the room, her heart beating so hard she thought it would burst out of her chest. Through the bedroom window, the white horse was closer to the house, as if knowing she needed protection. Adam banged on the bedroom door forcefully. Valerie! Open this door now! The girl huddled under the covers, trembling. She knew that her life had changed forever on that rainy night, and that the man she called father was in fact her greatest enemy. The bedroom door opened violently. Adam entered with his face red with anger, his eyes fixed on Valerie, who huddled even more under the covers. "How long have you been listening to me?" he asked, his voice low and menacing. Valerie shook her head, trying to look innocent. "I just came down because I heard the sound of the rain, Daddy." Adam approached the bed, studying the girl's face. He knew too well that extraordinary ability she had to memorize entire conversations. For years, he had been impressed when she faithfully repeated dialogues she had heard days before, word for word. "Repeat to me what you heard," he ordered, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I didn't hear anything, Daddy, just the sound of the rain and thunder." Adam's eyes narrowed. He grabbed the girl's arm forcefully. "Valerie, you know I always know when you're lying. Your memory doesn't let you forget anything, does it?" The girl started to cry. His grip hurt, and she had never seen Adam with that frightening expression on his face. "I didn't hear anything, I promise." Adam released her arm and started walking around the room, running his hands through his graying hair. He knew he was lost. If Valerie had heard the conversation about the oil-rich lands, about the forged documents, about his plans to get rid of her, everything was ruined. "Do you remember when you were a baby?" he asked suddenly. Valerie stopped crying, confused by the change of subject. "Sometimes I have dreams with a woman singing to me." "What kind of song?" "A song about little birds. She had brown hair and smelled like flowers." Adam's face hardened. He had hoped the girl was too young to retain memories from before the adoption, but apparently her exceptional memory extended to her early years of life. Outside, the white horse neighed again, closer to the house. Adam went to the window and saw the animal standing right in front of the main gate, as if guarding. "That horse? Was he here when you arrived?" Adam asked, more to himself than to Valerie. The girl nodded. "He's always been here. Sometimes I think he knows me from somewhere." Adam felt a chill in his stomach. That horse had appeared on the property shortly after he brought Valerie home, 4 years ago. At the time, he had tried several times to capture the animal to sell it, but the horse always escaped, disappearing for days before reappearing grazing in the fields. "Valerie," he said, trying to control his voice, "tomorrow we will take a trip." "Where to?" "To a special place. But first, you need to promise me one thing. Never tell anyone the things you hear at home. Understand?" The girl nodded, but her eyes showed fear. She didn't understand why Adam was so different, why his hands trembled while he spoke. "Now sleep. Tomorrow will be a very important day." Adam left the room, locking the door from the outside. Valerie heard the key turning and despaired. She had never been locked in the room before. Running to the window, she saw the white horse still at the gate. The animal raised its head and seemed to look directly at her. Valerie pounded on the glass, trying to get his attention, and the horse neighed softly, as if it had heard her. Throughout the night, Adam stayed in the study, making calls. Valerie could hear fragments of the conversations through the walls of the old house. "Yes, I need to resolve it tomorrow. There can be no witnesses. The well in the back of the property, no one will look there. The snakes will take care of the rest." The girl felt nauseous. She didn't know exactly what Adam was planning, but she knew she was in mortal danger. Her exceptional memory had become a curse, and now he saw in her a threat that needed to be eliminated. When the sun rose, Adam returned to her room. There were bags under his eyes, and his clothes were wrinkled as if he hadn't slept. "Get up, Valerie. Time for our trip." The girl dressed with trembling hands. When they went down the stairs, she saw that Adam had prepared a small backpack, but it didn't seem to be for a normal trip. There were no clothes of hers there, only some strange tools that she didn't recognize. "Where are we going?" she asked, trying not to show fear. "To a place where you will be safe," Adam lied, grabbing her hand more forcefully than necessary. They left the house and walked towards the back of the property. Valerie had never gone so far into the fields, and the further they moved away from the mansion, the more nervous she became. The white horse followed them at a distance, always remaining visible but out of Adam's reach. The girl tried to wave at the animal, but Adam pulled her hand violently. "Don't look back," he ordered, "and stop trying to call that horse." After 20 minutes of walking, they arrived at an isolated area where there was an old well surrounded by stones worn by time. The place seemed abandoned for decades, and Valerie smelled a strange odor coming from inside the well. "It's here," Adam said, letting go of her hand. Valerie looked around, confused. "But where is the special place you talked about?" Adam didn't answer. Instead, he opened the backpack and took out a rope. His eyes were cold, with no trace of the person she knew as father. "Adam?" she asked, using his name for the first time in her life, instinctively knowing that he was no longer her father. The man turned to her with an expression that made her understand, finally, that she would never return home. Valerie took a step back, her wide eyes fixed on the rope in Adam's hands. The smell coming from the well was even stronger now that they were close, a putrid and damp odor that made her stomach churn. "Please, I promise I won't tell anyone," she pleaded, her voice coming out as a desperate whisper. Adam tied one end of the rope to a large stone next to the well. His hands worked quickly, but she could see that they trembled slightly. "You don't understand, Valerie. It's not about telling or not telling. It's about what you already know, what's stored in that cursed memory of yours." The girl tried to run, but Adam was faster. He grabbed her arm and pulled her back, ignoring her cries of pain. "My parents, my real parents. You did something to them, didn't you?" The words came out of Valerie's mouth without her being able to control them. Her exceptional memory was connecting fragments of conversations, dreams, and sensations she had saved for years. Adam's face turned pale. "How do you—" "I remember the accident, the sound of metal breaking, the white horse running after the car." The memories flowed like a flood, clear and painful. "You were there." Adam pushed her violently, making her fall to her knees near the edge of the well. "Impossible. You were only a few months old." "I remember everything," Valerie said, tears streaming down her face. "The woman who sang to me, the man who called me little princess, the horse that was always in the yard of our house. And I remember you appearing after they were gone." From the bottom of the well came a hissing sound, the crawling of snakes moving between the damp stones. Valerie moved away from the edge, terrified, but Adam held her by the shoulders. "You ruined everything," he said, his voice full of anger and despair. "4 years planning, waiting for the right moment to have full access to the inheritance, and now this lawyer appears looking for you. If he finds out that you haven't disappeared, that I forged your adoption, I won't tell anyone, I swear. Your memory won't let you forget. And sooner or later, you will repeat something you heard, as you always do." Adam looked at the well, then at the girl. "The snakes are sleeping now because of the morning cold, but when the sun warms up, they will wake up hungry." Valerie followed his gaze and saw movement down there, dark shapes writhing slowly between the wet stones. The well was about 13 feet deep, with walls covered in slime and small dens where the snakes hid. "Please, Daddy," she tried one. "Last time, using the word that had always been a lie, I was never your father," Adam said, picking her up in his arms. "Your parents owned the most valuable lands in upstate New York. When they discovered oil on the property, I knew I needed to have access to that fortune. They were young, inexperienced. It was easy to cause the accident." Valerie struggled in his arms, but he was much stronger. "The horse? Was he my parents? That damn animal escaped on the night of the accident. I thought he had fled forever, but he followed you here, as if he knew where you were." In the distance, they heard a loud and prolonged neigh. The white horse appeared on top of a small hill, clearly agitated. His ears were pricked, and he was shaking his head as if realizing the danger. "He knows," Valerie murmured. "He always knew who you were." Adam held the girl over the well. "It doesn't matter what that horse knows. In a few hours, when the snakes wake up completely, there will be nothing left to tell the story." "Help!" Valerie screamed with all the strength of her lungs. "Help!" The white horse shot towards them, galloping faster than Valerie had ever seen. His hooves pounded on the ground like drums, raising dust and making the earth tremble. Adam looked at the approaching animal and panicked. Without further hesitation, he released Valerie. The girl fell screaming into the dark well, hitting the stone walls before hitting the bottom with an impact that knocked all the air out of her lungs. Pain exploded in her left arm, and she felt something warm trickling from a cut on her forehead. Around her, the snakes began to move more quickly, disturbed by the sudden fall into their territory. Valerie huddled against a wall, trying to make herself as small as possible, while tears of terror ran down her injured face. Up there, she heard Adam screaming and the horse neighing furiously. It seemed that a fight was happening, with sounds of branches breaking and earth being turned over. "Get me out of here," she screamed. "Please, get me out of here." But soon, the sounds above ceased. Valerie heard footsteps moving away, and then only silence. A large, dark-colored snake slithered slowly in her direction. The girl closed her eyes and braced herself for the worst, when she heard the horses neigh again, now coming from above, right at the edge of the well. Opening her eyes, she saw the white silhouette of the animal silhouetted against the blue morning sky. The horse looked down, clearly distressed, circling the edge of the well and neighing loudly, as if calling for help. "He's gone," Valerie said to the horse, her voice echoing in the damp walls. "Adam left me here and went away." The horse didn't stop neighing. Its desperate cries echoed through the empty fields, carried by the morning wind. It was as if it knew that those cries were the only hope of salvation for the girl it had promised to protect. The snakes continued to move around Valerie, but she noticed something strange. Several of them seemed injured or dead, as if someone had trampled on them before her arrival. The bottom of the well was covered in immobile snakes, and she realized that the horse had tried to clear the way for her before she was thrown down there. But even with fewer live snakes, her situation remained desperate. Injured, hungry, and thirsty, trapped in a 13-foot-deep well, Valerie could only hope that the horse's cries would reach the ears of someone who could save her before it was too late. The hours passed slowly at the bottom of the well. Valerie tried to remain still against the stone wall, watching the snakes that still moved lazily around her. Her left arm ached terribly, and she suspected it was broken. The cut on her forehead had stopped bleeding, but the headache was constant. The sun rose in the sky, and with the heat, the snakes began to become more active. Valerie felt thirsty, very thirsty, and her throat was dry from crying and screaming. Up above, the white horse continued its vigil, neighing at regular intervals, as if it were a distress signal. It was around noon that Valerie heard distant voices. First, she thought she was imagining it, delirious from thirst and fear. But the sounds became clearer. "Are you hearing that, Connie?" said a rough male voice. "That horse has been neighing for hours, Joe. Something isn't right," replied a female voice full of concern. Valerie tried to scream, but her voice came out weak and hoarse. "Help! I'm down here." The footsteps approached, and soon she saw two faces appear at the edge of the well. A dark-skinned man with grey hair, with deep wrinkles around his eyes, and a middle-aged woman with black hair tied in a simple bun. "Jesus Christ!" exclaimed the woman, bringing her hands to her face. "Joe, there's a child down there." "I can't believe what I'm seeing," murmured the man, kneeling on the edge. "Little girl, are you hurt?" Valerie tried to speak, but could only groan. Connie turned to her husband with tears in her eyes. "She's hurt, Joe. And look how many dead snakes are down there. How did she manage?" "The horse," whispered Joe, looking at the white animal that had finally stopped neighing and was watching them attentively. He must have gone down here and killed the snakes before the girl fell. Connie Ferreira, 45 years old, felt her heart clench upon seeing the injured and frightened child. 3 years ago she had lost her own daughter, Annie, also 4 years old, due to a fever they couldn't treat in time. Since then, her house had become empty, her womb had closed forever, and she lived with constant pain in her chest. Ana Lucia was changed to Annie for cultural relevance. "We're going to get her out of there," she said, already taking the scarf off her head. "Joe, did you bring the rope?" Joe Ferreira, 52 years old, a farm worker who knew every inch of those lands where he had toiled for 3 decades, ran to the cart where he kept his tools. He and his wife were sharecroppers on the property, living in a simple clapboard house a mile away. When he returned with the rope, they improvised a system to descend to Valerie. Connie, who was lighter, went down first, tied around the waist. "Calm down, honey," she said softly, touching the girl's face gently. "I'm here to help you. What's your name?" "Valerie," murmured the girl, her voice almost inaudible. "What a pretty name. I'm Connie, and up there is my husband, Joe. You're hurt, but we're going to take care of you." Connie examined Valerie's injuries carefully. The arm was swollen and purple, clearly fractured, and there were several scratches on her body, but what worried her most was the child's emotional state. Her eyes were glazed over, as if she had seen something terrible. "Can you tell me what happened?" Connie asked gently, while tying Valerie against her body to go up. "He threw me down here," said Valerie, starting to cry again. "Adam said I knew too much." Connie and Joe exchanged worried glances. They knew Adam Sterling by name, the wealthy landowner who lived in the secluded mansion, but they would never have imagined that he was capable of such cruelty. When they finally managed to get Valerie out of the well, Connie wrapped her in her shawl and cradled her as she had done with her own daughter years before. "Joe, we need to take her home immediately. She has a fever and needs medical care." They put Valerie in the cart, and the white horse followed them all the way to the Ferreira's house. It was a simple construction, with clapboard walls and a red tile roof, but clean and cozy, with a small garden where Connie grew medicinal herbs. "Why is the horse following us?" asked Joe. "He knows the girl," said Connie, watching how the animal always stayed close to the cart. "Look how he looks at her. It's like protection." Upon arriving home, Connie prepared an improvised bed in the living room and began to treat Valerie's injuries. She had learned home remedies from her grandmother, knowing herbs and techniques that helped in healing. "We'll have to immobilize that arm," she said to her husband, "and she needs to drink plenty of water. She must be dehydrated." During the first care, Valerie was delirious with fever, mumbling disconnected words about wells, snakes, and a bad man. Connie stayed by her side all night, placing damp cloths on her forehead and forcing her to drink small sips of water with honey. Joe, meanwhile, couldn't stop thinking about the situation. "Connie, if what the girl said is true, if Adam really did this to her, we need to do something." "First, she needs to recover," Connie said firmly. "Then we'll see what to do." Outside, the white horse remained all night near the window of the room where Valerie rested. Whenever she screamed during the nightmares, the animal neighed softly, as if trying to calm her. The next morning, Valerie's fever had subsided a little, but she was still very weak. Connie prepared chicken soup and managed to get her to eat. "A few spoonfuls." "Where are your parents, honey?" Connie asked softly. "They were gone when I was a baby," said Valerie, her voice still weak. "Adam said he adopted me, but I think he lied about everything." "How do you mean lied?" "I remember things. The accident. He was there. And the horse was there too." Valerie looked out the window, where she could see the animal grazing in the small yard. "The horse knew my real parents." Connie felt a chill. If the girl was telling the truth, they were dealing with something much more serious than they imagined. "Joe, she called her husband. "Come here, I think we need to talk." To Sheriff Thompson. Delegado Torres changed to Sheriff Thompson, a more culturally relevant term for the U.S., but before they could make any decisions, they heard the sound of a car approaching. Through the window, they saw a black SUV stopping in front of the house. Adam. Sterling got out of the vehicle, accompanied by two men whom Joe didn't recognize. The businessman's face was grim, and he looked directly at the window where Valerie was. "He came to get me," whispered the girl, clinging to Connie's arm in despair. "He said he would come back to finish what he started." Connie picked Valerie up and took her quickly to the back room, while Joe went to answer Adam at the door. The woman's heart was beating erratically. She knew that cold look in the businessman's eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Ferreira," said Adam with a forced smile. "I heard you found my adopted daughter. I came to get her." "She's very hurt, Mr. Sterling," replied Joe, trying to keep his voice steady. "She fell into a well full of snakes. How did that happen? The girl ran away from home yesterday morning. I looked for her all night. She must have gotten lost and fallen into the well by accident." Adam looked over Joe's shoulder. "Where is she? I want to take her home." "In the room." Valerie trembled in Connie's arms. "He's lying," she whispered. "He threw me in there. He wanted the snakes to kill me." Connie felt her blood run cold. The way Adam spoke, so casual about a terrible accident involving a 4-year-old in child, didn't seem natural. And the two men he had brought stayed in the car, but she could see them watching the house carefully. "She needs medical care first," said Joe at the door. "Her arm is broken. I'll take care of that. I have money to pay the best doctors in the area." Adam took a step forward. "Now, please, bring my daughter." It was then that the white horse appeared in the yard. The animal positioned itself between the house and Adam, lowering its head and showing an aggressiveness that Joe had never seen in any horse. "That animal," murmured Adam, stepping back. "Where did he come from?" "Appeared here a few years ago. He's always been tame. I've never seen him act like this," said Joe, observing the horse's strange behavior. Adam stared at the animal, and Joe noticed sweat forming on his forehead despite the day not being hot. "Mr. Sterling," said Joe slowly, "the girl said some strange things while she had a fever, about an accident, about her real parents." "Feverish delusions," Adam cut in quickly. "Children make up a lot of stories when they're sick." She said, "You were present at her parents' accident." Adam's face hardened. "That girl has a very fertile imagination. She's always made up stories. It's a problem I've been trying to correct for years." In the room, Connie held Valerie tighter. The girl had begun to speak softly, reciting with her exceptional memory pieces of conversations she had overheard. 50 million for the lands of Hope Ranch. Didn't leave a registered will. The oil-rich lands will yield millions. I forged the adoption papers 4 years ago." Connie was shocked. Those words coming out of the mouth of a 4-year-old child were too disturbing to be made up. Outside, Adam was losing patience. "Joe, I don't have time for this. Bring the girl now." "She's sleeping. The fever has left her very weak. Then I'll go get her myself." Adam tried to push Joe, but the farm worker, accustomed to hard work, held firm to the doorframe. "I don't think—" "That's a good idea, Mr. Sterling. The girl is scared, saying you hurt her on purpose." Adam's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you questioning my word? I'm trying to protect an injured child." It was at that moment that Sheriff Dale Thompson appeared on the road, driving his official patrol car. He had received an anonymous call, reporting screams coming from the Ferreira's property during the early hours. "What's this gathering here?" asked the sheriff, getting out of the car. Dale Thompson was an honest man, 58 years old, known in the area for his integrity. "Sheriff Thompson," said Adam, immediately changing his tone of voice. "Good to see you. I came to get my adopted daughter who got lost yesterday. I heard she fell into a well with snakes. Serious situation. An unfortunate accident. Children, right? Always getting into trouble." The sheriff looked at Joe. "Can I talk to the girl?" Before Adam could protest, Connie appeared in the doorway carrying Valerie. The child was pale, with her arm immobilized in an improvised sling. "Hello, little one," said the sheriff gently. "How are you feeling?" Valerie looked at Adam and huddled against Connie. "He threw me in the well," she said in a trembling voice. "He said I knew too much about the lands that belonged to my mom." The silence that followed was heavy. Adam forced a laugh. "Sheriff, as I said, she's been making up a lot of stories. Trauma from the accident, I imagine." But Sheriff Thompson knew. Children. He had 6 grandchildren and knew how to tell when a child was lying or telling the truth. The details in Valerie's speech, the genuine fear in her eyes when she looked at Adam, all of it bothered him. "Valerie," he said, kneeling to the girl's height, "can you tell me exactly what happened yesterday?" With her exceptional memory, Valerie began to recount with astonishing accuracy every word she had heard in Adam's telephone conversation. She spoke about the oil-rich lands, about the forged documents, about the threats he had made. The more she spoke, the paler Adam became. It was impossible for a 4-year-old child to invent such specific details about real estate deals and legal documentation. "Sheriff," interrupted Adam, "you can't give credence to the fantasies of a traumatized child." "Those aren't fantasies," said the sheriff slowly. "She's describing things that a child shouldn't know." Connie approached the sheriff. "Sheriff Thompson, there's one more thing. The girl said she remembers her real parents' accident, and that Adam was there." "That's ridiculous," exploded Adam. "She doesn't even remember her own parents." "I do remember," said Valerie, looking directly at him. "I remember Mom singing about little birds. I remember Dad calling me little princess. And I remember the white horse that lived in our yard." Everyone looked at the horse, which remained nearby, watching Adam with hostility. "That horse? Was he your parents?" asked the sheriff. Valerie nodded. "He ran away on the night of the accident, but he followed me to Adam's house. He always knew I was his girl." Sheriff Thompson stood up, his expression serious. "Mr. Sterling, I think it's best if we talk at the sheriff's office. There are some questions that need to be clarified." "I have nothing to hide," said Adam, but his voice betrayed nervousness. "Then you won't mind answering some questions about the girl's adoption, about her parents' accident, and about what happened yesterday at the well." Adam looked around, at the determined sheriff, at Joe and Connie protecting Valerie, at the horse that stared at him like an enemy. For the first time in years, he felt cornered. "All right," he said finally, "let's go to the sheriff's office, but I want my daughter back today." "We'll see," said Sheriff Thompson. "First, we'll verify the adoption paperwork and investigate these allegations." As Adam drove off with the sheriff, Valerie relaxed in Connie's arms. The horse approached the porch and neighed softly, as if saying that he would continue to protect his girl. But Connie knew that the fight was just beginning. Adam was rich and powerful, and he wouldn't easily give up the inheritance he had spent years planning to steal. 3 weeks had passed since Sheriff Thompson had taken Adam in for questioning. During this time, Valerie slowly recovered at the Ferreira's house under Connie's loving care. Her arm was healing well, and the nightmares began to diminish, especially when the white horse slept. Near the bedroom window, Sheriff Thompson's investigation had revealed serious irregularities in the adoption documentation. The papers presented by Adam contained forged signatures and stamps that didn't exist at the alleged time. Even more disturbing, the investigation into Valerie's parents' accident showed inconsistencies in the original report. It was on a rainy morning that everything changed definitively. A violent storm had hit the area overnight, and when Joe went out to check the damage to his small farm, he made a macabre discovery. "Connie!" he shouted from the area near the old well. "Come here, quick!" The rain had caused the well to overflow, and the force of the water had unearthed something that had been hidden at the bottom for years. Small bones, decaying children's clothes, and pieces of toys emerged from the mud. Connie arrived running. and brought her hands to her mouth, horrified. "Jesus Christ, Joe! Are they children's bones?" he confirmed, his voice trembling. "Several children." Sheriff Thompson was called immediately, and with him came a team of forensic experts from Hartford. What they found was even more shocking than they imagined. Remains of at least 4 different children, all between 3 and 5 years old. Campos dos Goitacazes changed to Hartford, the capital of Connecticut, for cultural relevance. Valerie wasn't the first, Sheriff Thompson said to Connie as they watched the experts working. Adam has been doing this for years. The investigation deepened, and they discovered that Adam had adopted several orphaned children over the past decade, always children who possessed valuable inheritances or lands in their name. When they grew old enough to pose a threat, or when he managed to legally transfer the properties, they simply disappeared. The lawyer from the state capital, Mr. Richard Meyer, who had searched for Valerie weeks before, arrived in the town with documents, proving the girl's true identity. She was Valerie Santos Carvalho, only daughter of Edward and Marina Carvalho, owners of one of the largest rural fortunes in upstate New York. Augusto Mendez changed to Richard Meyer for cultural relevance. Her inheritance includes not only the oil-rich lands, explained Mr. Meyer to the sheriff and the Ferreiras, but also a recently discovered mineral reserve that is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Connie held Valerie in her arms as she listened to the revelations. The girl, with her exceptional memory, had absorbed every word, but seemed more interested in watching the white horse in the yard than in the astronomical numbers being discussed. "What about the horse?" asked Valerie suddenly. "Was he my parents too?" Mr. Meyer smiled. "According to the records, your father had a passion for horses. This one is called Hope. He was Edward's favorite. When the accident happened, the animal fled and was never found again." "Until now," said Connie softly, stroking Valerie's hair. By this point, Adam was already in pre-trial detention. During the interrogations, confronted with the evidence of the bones found and the inconsistencies in his documentation, he finally confessed his crimes. He had caused the accident that killed Valerie's parents when she was only 8 months old. He had discovered the oil reserves through contacts in the government and knew that the Carvalho family owned the most valuable lands in the region. He forged adoption papers and created a false identity for himself, hiding his criminal past. But Valerie was different from the others, he confessed to the sheriff. Her memory, she remembered everything. The older she got, the more dangerous she became. I knew that one day she would remember the accident, my face that night. Adam's trial was swift. With so much evidence in the full confession, he was sentenced to life in prison for the murders of the children and Valerie's parents. All the properties he had stolen were confiscated and returned to the rightful heirs or the state. But the great turnaround came during the final days of the process. Adam, desperate to reduce his sentence, offered information about an adoption document forgery ring that operated between New York City and Philadelphia. His cooperation led to the arrest of other criminals, but it wasn't enough to save himself from justice. Rio de Janeiro y Espiritu Santo changed to New York City and Philadelphia for cultural relevance. In the last week of March, exactly 1 year after being thrown into the well, Valerie was officially back in control of her inheritance. But she had made a decision that surprised everyone. "I want Joe and Connie to be my parents," she announced to Mr. Meyer, with the determination that only a 5-year-old child can have. "Valerie," explained the lawyer patiently, "you are entitled to a very comfortable life. You can study at the best schools, travel the world. I want to stay here, with them and with Hope," she said, pointing to the horse grazing in the yard. "They saved me. They really love me." Connie was in tears. After losing Annie, she never imagined she would have another chance to be a mother. And Joe, a simple man who had worked his whole life on other people's lands, could hardly believe that a millionaire child would choose to stay with them. "But your inheritance," began Mr. Meyer. "I want to give the lands to the families who work on them," said Valerie. "Like Joe and Connie worked for Adam. They deserve to have their own houses." With the help of the lawyer and under judicial supervision, a fund was created that distributed the lands among the families of farm workers in the region. Valerie kept only a small property where they built a new house for her adoptive family and a proper stable for Hope. Adam's final fate was even more cruel than prison. In jail, other prisoners discovered that he had murdered children. The prison justice was relentless, and Adam spent his last years isolated, sick, and abandoned by everyone, just as he had left his victims. 2 years later, Valerie ran through the fields of her property riding Hope, now recovered and strong. The horse had become not only her companion, but her eternal protector. Connie watched her from the porch, 8 months pregnant. A miracle that doctors said was impossible, but that happened after she found reasons to smile again. Joe had become the administrator of the distributed lands, helping other families thrive in sustainable agriculture. The rural community grew and strengthened, transforming the entire region. "Valerie!" called Connie. "Dinner time!" The girl, now 7 years old, galloped back home, followed faithfully by Hope. Her nightmares had disappeared completely, replaced by dreams about the future she was building with her true family. That night, like all others, Hope slept in the pasture near the house, from where he could hear the quiet breathing of his girl. The horse had fulfilled his silent promise to protect the daughter of Edward and Marina until she found safety and true love. The storm that almost destroyed Valerie's life had, ironically, revealed the truth that freed her. And, in the lands where there was once suffering and exploitation, now flourished hope, justice, and a family built not by blood, but by unconditional love that overcomes all tragedies. The snake pit was sealed forever, and in its place, Joe planted sunflowers. Flowers that always seek the light, even after the darkest nights.